T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland? I mean, it's one of the most famous poems of the 20th century. But let's be honest, it's also one of the most intimidating, right? It's this sprawling, fragmented collage of different languages, weird quotes, and strange scenes. It can feel like trying to solve a puzzle when you know half the pieces are just gone. So, okay, let's dive in and see if we can crack this thing.
And if you've ever felt completely lost trying to read it, you are definitely not alone. The source we're leaning on for this explainer, an essay by Rafael Cassany Gonzalez, just nails this feeling. He talks about this sense of, incompetence, like you're in an exam for a class you never even took.
So that brings us to the big question, right? If it's so famously difficult, why on earth is it considered a masterpiece? Why are we still talking about it 100 years later? There's got to be a key, some kind of method to unlock it. And as it turns out, there is. And Eliot himself is the one who gave it to us.
Now, to get a handle on an Eliot solution, we first have to really understand the problem he was up against. I mean, this poem wasn't just written in a vacuum. It was basically forged in the fire of a global catastrophe.
You have to put yourself in his shoes. For T.S. Eliot, looking out at the world after World War I, modern life seemed like what he called an immense panorama of futility and anarchy. I mean, think about it. The old certainties were just gone. Traditions felt empty. History itself felt like a pile of rubble. So the real question is, how does an artist even begin to make art out of that?
Well, you can't really use old tools to build something brand new. Eliot knew that. To give any kind of shape to this modern chaos, he needed a totally new artistic technique, a new method for a new and broken world. And he called it the mythical method. Here's the core idea. It's all about weaving together the modern world with all its anxiety and broken pieces, with the myths and stories of the ancient past. It's about setting up this constant conversation between the now and the then. And look, here it is in Eliot's own words. This wasn't just some clever literary game he was playing. It was a tool for survival, a way of controlling, ordering, giving some kind of shape and meaning to a world that felt like it had none. It was his way to make the modern world even possible for art.
Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, but what does this mythical method actually look like on the page? Let's get into a couple of examples.
This is a perfect one right here. So Chaucer, way back in the 14th century, opens his famous poem with this classic image of April being a time of rebirth, sweet spring rain. What does Eliot do? He grabs that exact same starting point and just completely twists it. For the modern world, he says, April is the cruelest month. Why? Because rebirth is painful and remembering the past is a burden. See what he did? He's using the past to give the present a whole new, tragic weight.
And he does this everywhere. Just look at this list of references from just one section of the poem. Eliot's creating this incredibly dense collage. Some people call it a bricolage of cultural history. He's layering these huge voices like Shakespeare, Ovid, and Milton right on top of a really tense modern scene between a man and a woman. It creates these echoes of ancient tragedy bouncing around inside a modern apartment. It's brilliant.
He actually had a name for these pieces. He called them withered stumps of time. So he's not just quoting the classics to show how smart he is. He's taking these broken pieces of a much grander past and repurposing them, using them like building blocks to create something totally new and contemporary.
Okay, but if you're sitting there thinking, great, so I still have to know all those references to get it, just hang on. The mythical method works on a much, much deeper level than just a game of spot the quote. It's more emotional than that.
The critic Leslie Fielder put it really well. He said, myth isn't just a bunch of old stories about gods and heroes. It's more like a shared perceptual grid. It's these deep, often unconscious patterns and symbols, the archetypes, that we all kind of share and use to make sense of the world. It's like the operating system our culture runs on.
And this, right here, is probably the most freeing idea for anyone trying to read The Wasteland. Eliot himself said it best. You don't have to intellectually understand every single line to feel the poem's power. It can communicate with you before you can explain it.
And that's because it's tapping into these huge, universal human themes, sometimes called mythomes. So you might not know the specific myth of the Fisher King, but you definitely understand the feeling of a dry, barren land just waiting for rain. You feel that tension between death and the hope for some kind of rebirth. These are the powerful emotional currents running just beneath the poem's fragmented surface.
So let's pull all this together. What is this mythical method really for? What's the endgame?
It's really a three-step process. First, you have to look the chaos of the modern world square in the face. Don't look away. Second, you gather up the fragments of our shared cultural past. And finally, you use those fragments to build something new for yourself, a personal structure that can give you a sense of order and meaning in a world that feels totally disordered.
And this shift toward a solution is just beautifully shown near the end of the poem. Eliot pulls from the ancient Hindu Upanishads, and the thunder speaks 3 commands: give, sympathize, control. It's this ethical framework, this path toward healing, offered up from the fragments of a completely different ancient culture.
This one line, this is the heart of the whole poem. It's the mission statement of the mythical method. The speaker is admitting, yeah, my world is in ruins, but they're actively using these pieces of cultural memory, these fragments, to build a defense, to shore up a little space for meaning to exist.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Eliot's world back in 1922 felt chaotic, overwhelming, and fragmented. A century later, our world, with its endless information, its constant crises, it can feel just as broken. So the poem's central challenge is still very much our own. When we're faced with our own ruins, what fragments will we choose to build with?